Disrupting your ego story. We live in a very strange time where the tools and the means to disrupt your ego story are widely available. But we really want to consider the mentality behind that wants to disrupt the ego story. Like, why? What do you think is on the other side of it? And before we start doing things like that with some of the tools that I'll mention, we want to ask, do we have the emotional space to be disrupted? Disrupting the ego story is disrupting the way you think, the way you feel, the way you sense your body. And that's not an easy process. This is not going to be the quick and easy path. And it's unfortunate that people are thinking quick and easy. Quick and easy usually leads towards more distress or useless results. How do we be full of care, careful, F-U-L-L, with this work of disrupting the ego story? Welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Tolles. If you're new, please feel free to check out my spiritualawakeningprocess.com and subscribe to this channel. And to do all those other different things to help share this content in a sea of nonsense. It really does matter. You don't know who you'll help. I don't know who I'll help because that's how the internet works. But just know that I'm grateful for your support. If you want to support me, you can sign up to the newsletter to get more in touch about classes, sessions, and community work. And you can also donate through the donation link. I think most people have learned, thanks to the popularization of ego and ego being bad, that being lost in our ego just gives us more suffering. People have gotten that message, and so now the next step is like, well, how do I get rid of it? And that is a fundamentally flawed way to think about this work. It's fundamentally flawed because we're not even defining what the ego is that we're going to get rid of. The way I define ego really kind of falls into two main buckets of the unconscious ego and the conscious ego. And here's the distinction. The unconscious ego, we don't understand. We don't know that we have it usually. Initially, we're so immersed in it that we have no sense of perspective. It's full of all sorts of beliefs and patterns that were taught to us through childhood and then we've repeated into adulthood. It's just on autopilot. It has nothing to do with reality. It has everything to do with repeating patterns. And the big distinction I make when I talk about a conscious ego is it's focused on reality and it knows it's made up, which means we can let go of pieces of it or all of it whenever we need to. That's power. The unconscious ego, you can't ever do that because you don't even realize it exists. And typically, as we're developing a conscious ego, we are more fully understanding just how many levels of unconsciousness there are inside of us. There's a lot. And maybe a simple metaphor is clothing. Imagine if you didn't know what you were wearing. And you just thought this was you. No, this is me. And like somebody starts pulling on something and like, I'm going to take this off of you. And you're like, no, this is me. You're going to destroy me, right? And then it comes off and you're like, oh, what was I upset about? And then, the next thing comes like, and they start pulling. I was like, no, you can't take this off of me. It's like, all this stuff is made up. When you know that this is made up, you can take this shirt on or off as you need to, as the situation demands of you. That's powerful. Being stuck in the same clothes, regardless of the weather and the situation, can make you quite miserable. If I were to walk outside in sub-zero degree temperature, just wearing this, I would start to suffer. I would be rather cold. Then if it's really, really cold, I could die. It's not usually so extreme with our ego, but sometimes. But if I know that these are clothes and I can put them on, I can put on the appropriate amount in that sub-zero degree temperature. and I can enjoy my time out there, engage with it better. The conscious ego is a lens to help you make decisions out of all the massive information that you're being given in life. That is a necessary thing. The misconception that somehow you can have no decision-making apparatus or you'll just feel something, the feelings, that's your subconscious ego. So just because your brain is empty and you're still making perceptions about things, that's going on. You are perceiving. You're actively perceiving now. If you're listening to this video, you've chosen to listen to this video and to block out all sorts of other sensory stimuli. Those are choices. The ego is a filter. That's helpful. When we know what we're filtering in and what we're filtering out, that's powerful. When we don't know what we're filtering out and what we're letting in, that is disempowering. We often misread situations because of that filter. I was like, wow, I really thought so-and-so was really into me and they really liked me. And it's like you were misreading their cues because your ego wanted to see some things interpret a certain way and didn't see other things and block them out. Oh, wow, they really never really paid attention to me that much when I was talking. They're always looking at their phone, but at the time you want to believe that they were, so you just imagine they were in your head, and we do this all the time. This leads to this whole discussion of, okay, let's get rid of the ego, the unconscious part. Got it. Unconscious ego bad, conscious ego good, made up. Okay, let's get rid of it. It's like, let's stop again. Why are we trying to get rid of things? What are our underlying goals? And this is where you have to be honest with yourself and get out the journal. The journal is great because this is where you can be honest with yourself. And these days, I encourage people to do more with a pen and the pad as opposed to doing stuff with digital devices. Just getting out of that sphere and all the stuff that's doing to our brains. Try to minimize it, use the digital as a tool. So sitting down and being able to write down, what am I trying to get to? What do I think my life is going to be after I've gotten rid of that nasty unconscious ego? Will really help you, and you have to be really honest. You're going to thrive on this path by how honest you are. Because a lot of what people are hoping is for some level of physical ease, social approval, more money. Money is basically social approval in a lot of regards, but you get the idea that we start to have this sort of magical idea that over here is this perfect thing if I just get rid of this. That's not what this path does. This path is just letting go of our illusion to see what is real and then being able to respond to what's real. As much of reality as a human being can actually see. We also acknowledge that there are limitations. But I hear so much of this, let's kill the ego and destroy the ego and get rid of ego. And people are doing stuff with plant medicines and different kinds of psychedelics, and they're doing stuff with intense breath work or going on these super long retreats so that there's no way that you can live that lifestyle when they go back to their everyday work life. And that's causing a kind of trauma, honestly. Like every now and then somebody's gone through that and they're talking to me about like, I didn't know how to integrate, after my 3-month Vipassana. It's like, of course not. Because that lifestyle is not this lifestyle over here. Also, a lot of these things are not deconstructing ego at all. What they're doing is they're giving you a different experience that potentially you prefer. And depending on the traumas that are stuck inside of people, sometimes those come up or sometimes those are being deferred. And then you can open yourself wide open. You go back to whatever your normal situation is. You come down off of the plant medicine, leave the retreat, whatever. And then that space has been open and these things start erupting before somebody understands how to process them. We're not disrupting the ego willy-nilly here. We want to be extremely clear about what's going on inside someone, what their deeper agendas are that they're going to have to look at and let go of, and create spaces where we can let go of pieces. And this is what I call sustainable transformation. Sustainable transformation. Our ability to sustain changes that we want to make. Disrupting the ego story is not hard. I'm probably doing it right now for many of you. If I am, please leave a comment. We can talk more. The ego is so flimsy that 5 words will disrupt it. 1 word will disrupt it. 3 words, you are here now. Well, that was 4. There you go. You're welcome. And suddenly the ego's in rebellion having to repeat its story. So disruption is not going to be inherently hard. It's like, are we ready for the fallout? Do we know how to meditate? Do we know how to breathe? Do we know how to journal? Do we know how to come back to awareness? Staying as Awareness is the name of one of my videos on this channel. Feel free to find it if you haven't practiced that before. Right? That practice of watching and then breathing to regulate the nervous system and all the ups and downs that we have. If you really are hell-bent on a big event experience, which are not necessary and usually not very sustainable, then you need to do more preparation. And you need to have a longer come-down period after that big disruption. Now, we don't always know how big or small an event may be, so maybe the 7-day Vipassana retreat, you come back, and yeah, it was fine. But I am speaking to a certain segment of the population that will get into that sort of trouble. And I am speaking to some of you so that you don't ever get into that kind of trouble, because that can cause a lot of distress when we disrupt the story. Because we're just going to see whatever it is we need to see next, and it's not usually the thing, once again, your ego wants to see. We're talking about a disruption, not a continuance. For some people, that means you come back and you realize your wife does not love you. And you just had this amazing story that they were so into you, they love you, you have a wonderful marriage the last 12 years, all this sort of thing. And then you walk in and you just realize that this person has no interest in you. You two are just coexisting in a house. This happened for a lot of people during the pandemic when they got shut in together. Suddenly they realized they actually had no interest in each other. Obviously, it's gone the other way too, where some people realize, oh, wow, I really like this person. But that's its own sort of realization. We can have those as well, where our story has been so busy that we didn't realize how much we love somebody. On the other side of these things, like if there's somebody you haven't told them that you really love them in a while, they're part of your life, because you've been too busy and distracted, whatever, stop everything and go tell them you love them. And if you do that, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear how that goes, because the spiritual path can be those fun things. You often hear me talking about the heavier things because there's so much naivety, there's so much avoidance, there's so much pain and trauma that people are not dealing with, and they're hoping that the spiritual path is going to fix. Letting go of your ego, disrupting your ego story, is not a fix-all. It just shows you reality. And usually what ends up showing us is how out of touch we are with reality. And that becomes a big part. That it's not just about the disruption. It's now, what do you do with this information? How do you process the fact that you're way overweight and you didn't believe that you were? You got some lifestyle changes to make, right? How do you process the upset marriage? You got some conversations that you need to have. How do you process the traumas that you didn't realize you had that have been repressed? You're going to start researching some therapists, right? So there's a lot of steps that come after when you see reality. And they're often a challenge, a further challenge to your ego story that has to now develop skill sets that perhaps you don't have. Like how to vet a therapist, how to talk to your spouse about things that are difficult that you haven't talked about. You're not going to have knowledge about everything, everyone, and everything again 10 times over. With this path, you actually find out how little you know, and you're humbled. You're going to be humbled so much on this path. You're humbled right down to the ground, to dirt. But that is a profound place of power. The ground beneath us lifts everyone up, irrespective of who anybody else is. That's where this path takes us. That's what letting go of ego is. It doesn't mean you're worthless, right? That's more ego problems in the mix too. It's like, well, I already feel walked on. It's like, no, you don't feel walked on when you're the earth. That's just more wounding that has to be addressed. Again, there are some powerful tools out here. I don't recommend most of them for most people. I recommend small steps. I recommend the journaling to understand yourself more deeply. I recommend breathing and coming back to awareness. I recommend regular meditation, 30 minutes a day, silent, seated, building that sense of internal resilience, setting up the tools that you'll need to handle the disruption in a healthy way and to be transformed. Thanks for everyone's time and attention. Please share this video with others. Lots of love, everybody.